Welcome to Rookie Resource. My name is Ashley Kerr, and today we're going to be talking about being a DIY, a do-it-yourself landlord. There's so many options when it comes to purchasing a rental property. You can self-manage, you can hire someone to work directly for you, or you could hire a property management company. Today specifically, we're going to be talking about if you decide that you want to self-manage. Thank you so much for joining me, and if you haven't already, make sure you check out our other Rookie Resource videos. I've brought my computer today because I have a list of items that I want to share with you guys that have really helped me in my arsenal, my tool belt to become a better landlord, and also to give up some of my time to get it back by automations, creating systems and processes in my business for being a landlord. So the first one I want to talk to you about today is using property management software. So if you are collecting rent and you have a checklist on your table, if you received rent or not, you need to get this because this is life-changing. And I know from experience. After college, I worked as an accountant. I was on a career path to become a CPA and decided I could not sit at a desk every day. So luckily, I figured this out within 6 months and didn't waste too much time there. And I quit to become a property manager of a 40-unit apartment complex. My first day on the job, I walk into an office, small office inside the apartment complex. There's no windows, there's no AC, and there's a small bathroom attached. There's also boxes that have one-page lease agreements in them, a drawer full of keys, some labeled, some not labeled. And then on the desk is a piece of paper that was made into grid lines where someone took a ruler and took a marker and drew grid lines. Then it was each tenant's name and then the months. And there was a red check mark if that tenant paid rent for that month or not. So this obviously was not going to work for me, especially after the investor decided to purchase another 40-unit apartment complex. There was no way I could handle doing all of this and tracking it without ripping my hair out and crying every single night. So I had to figure out what was the best way to manage, and that is where I discovered property management software. The automations, the tools, the resources are so beneficial in helping you become a better landlord, but it's also so much easier on your tenants too. So there are some key things that I want you to look for when you're searching for property management software if you're going to self-manage. The property management software realm has been growing and growing and growing with so many new companies and so many new features coming out that you really have way more choices to choose from than I did over 10 years ago. So some of the important factors that you want to look for is rent collection, that your tenants can log into their app or their portal and they can pay rent online. They can set up automatic payments and it is just directly put into your bank account. You don't have to go and get the mail. You don't have to deposit their check. You don't have to remind them to pay because they can set up automatic payments. So rent collection is one of the biggest things. And then also having that integrate into some kind of bookkeeping where once they pay their rent, it's already banked in as rent income into your bookkeeping and you don't even have to add it into anywhere. So we got the rent collection automation, and then next we have the bookkeeping integrated. So one of the other features I love to have is having your tenant electronically sign for documents like the lease agreement. Having this feature helps tremendously with doing lease renewals. You don't need to meet in person. You can even have somebody sign the lease agreement electronically without having to meet them before they collect the keys to the property. Finding software like that, you want to be able to upload your own lease agreements. Make sure that you're using lease agreements that are specific to your state and you're not just taking the general template that's given to you by the property management software. Each state has their own rules and regulations. You can go to BiggerPockets.com and you can find under Pro Resources lease agreements. And if you're a Pro member, you get these for free. You get access to all of them. They're leases generated by attorneys in each state to make sure they're state specific. If you're not a Pro member, it is definitely worth signing up to be a Pro member to take advantage of getting access to these leases, but you can also buy the leases for a one-time fee for whichever state that you need. When going through these leases, make sure you do make some changes that are specific to your property. So for example, you may or may not allow pets in your property. You would want to put that in the lease agreement. You may have some rules that you want to make sure the tenants are aware of and put that into the lease agreement. I always like to include a policy list where these are some expectations I have of the tenant. This is what is allowed and what isn't allowed, and add that on and have them sign that too when they sign the lease agreement. We got rent collection, we got bookkeeping, we've got the lease agreements, and then we also have maintenance requests. I don't want to have that 2 a.m. phone call where a tenant is calling me or texting me anytime they want. It's disrupting my day because they have a maintenance request. I want my resident to be able to submit it through their portal, submit the maintenance request, then I get a text with the full issue. So a lot of these softwares have the maintenance where the tenant has to include a photo, a description. They have to even answer some questions as to, is this emergency? Is this a flowing leak or a tiny leak? Things like that can really help me diagnose it better, the maintenance request. Then I can take the maintenance request and I can forward it on to the vendor that I'm using to work for this. Then I also have a log of all of the maintenance requests and also the transactions that have happened and the communication for that maintenance request in case an issue ever comes up again, or a tenant, I end up going a victim and they say, hey, they never took in my maintenance request. I have all of this logged in the property management software. So now that we covered property management software, my next thing is a vendor list, is that you have at least 3 vendors for each specialty that could come up for your properties. So you're gonna want 3 plumbers to use. So you're gonna have a preferred contact for each of these, and then you wanna make sure you have a secondary and then a third in case your primary is not available. So you're gonna go through all the skilled trades, electrician, plumber, an HVAC tech, even a flooring guy, all of these things that may come up where you need maintenance at your property, a general handyman that can come in and fix a cabinet because it's falling off. Have your list of these, because when you get that maintenance request that comes in, it is going to be so much easier and easier mind when you already have these people in place where you can just forward it off to them and they'll take care of it for you. We once had a guest on the Rookie podcast where he had bought his first property, and I can't remember exactly the numbers on this, but he was making $400 in cash flow a month, let's say. And he got a phone call from the tenant, and he lived several hours away. And the tenant said there was this issue that needed to be fixed. And so immediately he started panicking and just so upset and distraught. And so he hung up with the tenant. He called the plumber, and the plumber is like, no problem, I'll get out there, blah, blah, blah. And this is what it would cost, things like that, and hangs up. And he just had all this anxiety built up in him, like, oh my God, my day is ruined. This is so awful, blah, blah, blah. This landlord also had reserves in place. So that's what he thought about. He thought, you know what? I have reserves in place that they're there for times like these. So I'm going to use my reserves to pay for this cost. I also still have X amount of cash flow. This was the only call that he got, the only maintenance issue, the only thing he had to do for his properties for the whole month. He's like, okay, that took me 5-10 minutes to take care of that solution. But because I already had a vendor, all I had to do was make that call for the vendor to take care of it, and then they went and took care of it. It's not even like he had to go to the property to actually fix the problem and take up some of his time and figure it out. Somebody else was doing that for him. And he finally realized, and I've taken this into account too after he said this, was that, these little inconveniences are a lot of times worth what you're making in cash flow and what you're making on your investment in this property. So that's where having these vendors that will take care of these problems and find you solutions is so beneficial and be less of a headache. Okay. So the next item, tenants calling you. I just don't like to talk on the phone at all, and I don't want to give tenants my personal cell phone number. I also don't really have an office to get a business landline for them to call, and I also don't want to sit into an office. So before I hired a virtual assistant who she now takes all the phone calls, but I still want to know what's going on. And she also lives in the Philippines. So for us to have the same phone, we use Google Voice. So I set up a Google Voice number, which connects to my cell phone. So I can look at the calls that are coming in. I can look at the text messages, but she can also be logged in on her computer. And before I even had a VA take care of this, I was able to have the number on my business partner. So whoever was available was able to take the call and speak with the tenant. And that way you can transfer the calls to whoever without ever having to change the number. And you can also go back and review the text messages, the voicemails, incoming, outgoing calls, which I think is great to keep track of all of that. Okay, so Google Voice, highly recommend. And then you can also set up your own personal mailbox. So said, hey, you've reached Ashley, leave a message, friend. It can be like, hi, if you're a resident calling, please leave a message and we'll get back to you whenever we can, a lot more professional. Okay, so next up on our list is using a virtual mailbox. This has become my favorite thing because I used to get stacks and stacks of mail and I would sit there for hours opening the mail, sorting the mail, scanning the mail in, paying the bills. So how this works is you get the mail sent to the mailbox. They give you a mailbox number sent to them. They scan in all the envelopes and then you get to select which ones you want open. At this point, I just have them open everything. So they scan it in, I see the outside, and then they go and they open the letters for me and scan in the documents for me, and I can view all of my mail online. So then I just pick and choose, like, okay, this is a bill, this needs to go into our software to get paid. This, just needs to be filed. It's a bank statement. This needs to go to bookkeeper for the bank statement to be reconciled, whatever it is. And now actually I have a whole list of if the mail item is this or for this entity, this is what you do with it. And I created a whole process. So I have a VA now and she actually goes into all of these scans and she sorts them for me and takes care of it. So it's pretty hands off, but I also always have the option to log in and look at the mail and check on things and say, okay, is everything going where it needs to be? Having just that set of eyes and being able to track all of the mail that comes into. Then any rent checks that come in, you have the option to forward them to another address. And then from there, they'll go and get deposited into the bank. So lots of options like that if you are sick of opening the mail like I was and having clutter and paper everywhere. So this kind of coincides with having Google Drive, setting up Google Drive folders as to one for each entity, one for each property, where you're keeping a copy of all your receipts, you're keeping the tenant leases. A lot of property management software has file storage in it. But what I'm always cautious of, and they do make this very difficult, if you decide to close down your property management, you have to go through and most of the times individually download every single document you ever uploaded to get that all back. There's usually not an easy way to re-download all those documents. So I do like to keep separate files in my Google Drive folder. So the last thing to kind of add to this is doing a unit information sheet. So this I'd love to do more in depth on a DIY landlord video, but this is where you're going through a unit, whether when you acquire it or when a tenant moves out, and you're updating as much information as you can about that unit and about that property, such as what is the make and model of the washing machine? Where's the water shutoff located? What's the square footage of each room? What type of flooring in there? This is amazing for when you have contractors going into the property. You can kind of give them a heads up. So we work with local appliance company, and anytime an appliance has an issue, we give them a call, and it is so nice, and they appreciate it so much too that we're able to tell them the make and model of what appliance is in there so that they are able to bring the parts and whatever they need for that specific make of washing machine. So unit information sheet. So if that's something you're interested in, comment below because I would love to do a video on that because I have a really great list that me and my maintenance guy kind of put together that we do for every single unit. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me for my top softwares and tricks that I use as a DIY landlord. If you have more that you'd like to add, please put them in the comments below so your rookie community members can also take advantage of these products. I'm Ashley, and thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you on the next episode of Real Estate Rookie Resource.